Talent versus hard work is an argument, a debate that comes up all the time when it comes to anything that has to do with developing skills, right? Like sports, arts, all that good stuff. Now, because this topic comes up so often in fighting games, I'm here to give my 2 cents on it. If you want a TLDR, I think hard work is a way bigger deal. No one comes out of the womb ready for uppercuts and wave dashes, right? Like that's kind of nuts to think about. Obviously, reaction times, things like this play a big deal. But what I think is a much bigger deal is one, hard work, but also a third thing that never gets brought up, and that is circumstance. Let's say 2 people want to get better, but one of them has to spend, 25 hours a day at the library because it's crunch time at school, and the other one has way more free time. Who do you think has more time to develop their skills? Obviously the second person. What about 2 kids in high school? They both have a lot of potential, they can get really good at the game, but one of them, their parents takes their Switch away after an hour, they don't let them go to locals. The second person, as long as he does his homework, their parents don't care, you can go to locals, you can play your Switch. Obviously the second person has a much better chance of developing themselves as a player, and some people might see that as talent down the line, but it just means that they had more opportunities to get better at the game, right? Lastly, location can be a big issue as well. You see Levin talk about how it's so hard for him to get good practice in Sweden, and John's aside, he's not wrong. If you lived in a hot spot where you can go to a local in 10 minutes, there's always someone to play with, it is much easier for you to get good practice, to have people find your flaws and work them out with you, compared to someone who's in the middle of nowhere, way better than everyone around them, and has to stick to garbage online just to find someone to play with, right? It's a much harder circumstance. So when it comes to developing yourself, to me, the order is hard work first, circumstances second, and talent at the bottom. And I want to talk about why a lot of people might think that talent is the big deal, and I'm going to use Armada, another great melee player, as an example here. So in Armada's video, Learning How to Learn, which I suggest you check out, I will link it in the description, he talks about how people should improve, like the 4 steps it takes to actually get better at something, to learn a skill and get better at it. I think the problem a lot of people have is they get stuck on step 1 here, which he calls experience. We're just gonna call it playing. Some people play the game 8 hours a day, they don't get that much better, and they're like, why didn't I get better? I've talked about this in another video, but that's not hard work. That is just playing the game. It's fun, it's not even work. There are more steps it takes to actually get better at something. Just because you play 8 hours a day does not mean you're working hard and someone has more talent than you. According to Armada, there's 3 other steps, which you should check out his videos that kind of beyond the scope of this one. But I think a lot of people get stuck in this trap where just because they're going about improving wrong, they start to blame other factors such as talent. And to me, that doesn't cut it. I think people need to take more responsibility for themselves. Maybe some players learn easier than others. They can just play the game and they'll learn skills faster. That doesn't mean that they're just more talented than you. It just means they learn in a different way than you do. And you should focus on finding out how you can learn, right? Maybe that's watching Mikey D. Luffy's videos. I don't know. I'm kind of kidding here with the self-plug, but for real, some people might get better just by playing because they learn concepts faster themselves. Just because you might need to go to an outside source to learn those concepts does not mean you are less talented. It just means that you learn in different ways. Maybe you need someone to tell you something. You're more of an audio learner. It takes other people explaining something to you, right? Maybe you need to just grind something out in training mode just to even get how it's working, right? You need the theoretical Mewtwo King where he needs to know the frame data of exactly why something works. That doesn't mean you're less talented than someone who learns things by themselves from thinking about it while they play. It just means you have a different style of learning, which is fine. Mewtwo King himself is a great example in this whole argument because in the Melee documentary, you will hear that he was an O2 player who really just grinded himself and got better, and now all of a sudden he became one of the best. He became the best at 2 different games at one point. Daigo Umehara, another player in Street Fighter, great example. If you read his book, he talks about the steps he takes to improve, right? How it's not just talent. And even in my old video where we look at Daigo, we see that he loses to a Fong player in a 1st to 5, and he doesn't just keep grinding the game and his talent carries him to figure out how to beat this character. He takes steps, he removes himself from the game for a bit, goes into training mode, sets up some situations, and really grinds out how to improve. This isn't talent. This is not just a talented player who has been carried by birth to multiple Street Fighter titles. He shows us in 15 minutes that even someone who's been playing this game for 25 years, or the franchise, can get better in a span of 15 minutes by really getting into some deep practice, right? So that's another example of players who kind of show off that talent really is not as big as the work you put into it. And let's take an outside source here from 2 books that I highly recommend you check out. So The Talent Code and The Little Book of Talent, both by Daniel Coyle, and they kind of build off each other. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I read these books years ago, so I don't remember the details, but I'll give you a really shitty TLDR. So Daniel Coyle realizes that a lot of Olympians and just really good athletes come from the same training ground, the same areas of the world. He calls these talent hotbeds, and he wants to figure out what's going on there, right? Are these just areas where all these talented people are just born in the same area, or what? So he starts visiting them individually one by one, and he notices that in some of these areas, they're like rundown shacks, almost like a ma and pa training ground, whatever. And some of the athletes there aren't even that great. They seem like they have no talent, but the coaches reassure them that, you know, as long as they stick around, we can make sure that they get in good shape. They can become a great athlete, maybe even hit the Olympics. He asks the coaches some of their secrets and whatnot, and he finds out that a lot of this growth is because the coaches are so good at helping these athletes get better in a way that naturally fits their brain, their learning style. This whole quote, I would read it, but at the end here we see, talent is determined far less by our genes and far more by our actions, specifically a combination of intensive practice and motivation that produces brain growth. My project evolved into a book called The Talent Code, which was about how the hotbeds succeed by aligning themselves with the brain's natural mechanisms for acquiring skill. Now, a lot of this is things we talked about in this video already and previous videos of mine, and that the way you grow is a much bigger deal than your inherent talent. Right? You need to find out the natural way your brain can take in information, how to apply that to your actual gameplay, and all that good stuff. So yeah, I hope maybe I convince you if you're on the side of talent. And even if you are on the side of talent, it's almost a dangerous way to look at things that way, because you're just stunting yourself. You'll believe that if someone's better than you, that they're just better, they're born that way. And if you keep telling yourself that, then you're setting yourself up for an early ceiling. You'll believe you can never pass that person when all these experts have shown you that you probably can. Well, that's my 2 cents on the topic. I hope I've inspired you or whatever. And if you enjoy the content, please leave a like and subscribe, and let me know if there's anything else you'd guys like to hear about. See you next time.